flickered with images of a small blue planet, Earth. The assembled alien representatives leaned back in their ergonomic chairs, their collective expression a mixture of amusement and disdain. Captain David Kim stood motionless, his dark eyes scanning the room. He was humanity's chosen representative, a man who had risen through the ranks of the United Earth Space Command with a reputation for calm precision. Beside him, Elena Park, a diplomatic advisor with sharp intelligence and an even sharper wit, remained equally composed. Corin Vex, the senior council representative from the Andromeda cluster, let out a condescending chuckle. His translucent skin rippled with what could only be described as pure dismissal. Humans, he announced to the assembled delegates, are barely capable of maintaining peace on their own planet. The idea that they could be a significant player in galactic politics is laughable. The holographic display showed Earth's modest space infrastructure, a few struggling colonies on Mars, some rudimentary mining operations in the asteroid belt, and a handful of deep space research stations. Compared to the millennia-old civilizations represented in the council chamber, humanity looked like children playing with broken toys. Michael Choi, the strategic analyst standing quietly in the corner, noticed something the others didn't. While the alien representatives mocked, he saw potential. The human technological progression was exponential. What took other species centuries, humans accomplished in decades. Look at their communication networks, Michael whispered to Elena. They're developing quantum communication faster than any species we've tracked. Elena nodded almost imperceptibly. She understood the game being played, and humanity was about to change the rules. The council meeting continued, with various representatives sharing their dismissive reports about human capabilities. The Zeta Reticuli delegation spoke about human military technology, as if discussing a primitive tribal group. The Orion Confederacy representatives laughed about human diplomatic inexperience. What they didn't realize was that every word, every dismissive gesture was being recorded. David Kim's neural implant was capturing every nuance, every moment of condescension. This wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. It was a first impression that would soon be dramatically rewritten. Outside the council chamber, human observation ships quietly gathered data. Advanced sensors probed the alien communication networks, learning, analyzing, understanding systems that were centuries beyond current human technology. It was a silent invasion of information, bloodless, but potentially more powerful than any military conquest. Corin Vex continued his speech, unaware that his own communication protocols were being dissected in real time by human analysts. The human species represents no strategic threat, he proclaimed. They are emotional, inconsistent, and technologically primitive. David Kim allowed himself the slightest smile. Emotions could be a strength, inconsistency could be unpredictability, and primitive was just another word for about to evolve. The meeting would conclude with humanity effectively being ignored, a decision the Galactic Council would soon regret. No one in that chamber understood the fundamental truth about human potential. When underestimated, humans didn't retreat, they innovated. As the delegates prepared to dismiss the human delegation, Michael Choi's quantum analysis was already calculating potential technological trajectories. Elena Park's diplomatic algorithms were mapping potential strategic responses, and David Kim stood, a human embodiment of quiet, patient potential. The first encounter was more than a meeting. It was the opening move in a game none of the alien civilizations understood, yet. When the final dismissal came, David Kim simply nodded, collected the diplomatic materials, and walked out. Behind him, the universe was already changing. They just didn't know it. Outside the council chambers, human communication networks lit up. Not with anger, not with fear, but with calculated, precise preparation. The game was just beginning. The Meridian conflict erupted with unexpected violence, catching most of the galaxy by surprise. The Orion Confederacy and Proxima Alliance had been building tensions for decades, and now their long-simmering dispute exploded into open warfare. Meridian sector. Entire planetary systems trembled as advanced weapon systems carved destruction across star lanes. The Orion Confederacy seemed to have the upper hand, with their superior fleet numbers and advanced energy weapons. Michael Choi sat in the human observation station, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Unlike traditional military strategists, he didn't just analyze battle data, he reimagined it. Where other analysts saw patterns, he saw opportunities. "They're predictable," Michael muttered, studying the conflict's tactical progression. The alien civilizations fought like they had for centuries, rigid, formal, following established military doctrines that hadn't changed in generations. Humans were different. Adaptability was their greatest weapon. Captain David Kim received the preliminary reports. The human diplomatic team had been quietly studying both the Orion Confederacy and Proxima Alliance for months. While other civilizations saw a traditional territorial dispute, the humans saw a complex network of potential interventions. Alina Park prepared a series of diplomatic communications. Her approach wasn't about choosing sides. It was about creating a new possibility that neither side had considered. The first human intervention came unexpectedly. A small flotilla of modified research vessels entered the conflict zone. They weren't armed for combat. Instead, they carried something far more powerful: advanced communication disruptors and quantum entanglement transmitters. Within hours, the entire battlefield changed. Communication networks between Orion Confederacy ships became scrambled. Precise military coordination collapsed. Their advanced weapon systems suddenly seemed less impressive when their commanders couldn't communicate effectively. The Proxima Alliance, initially losing the conflict, found themselves receiving mysterious tactical suggestions. These weren't traditional communications. They were subtle quantum-encrypted data streams that suggested alternative strategic approaches. Michael Choi's algorithms were rewriting the conflict in real time. He wasn't just analyzing the battle. He was subtly guiding it towards a resolution that minimized total destruction. Raneltok, a senior military commander observing from a distant monitoring station, watched in growing confusion. The human intervention didn't follow any known military doctrine. They weren't attacking. They weren't defending. They were restructuring the entire conflict. "This is impossible," Ranel muttered, watching tactical displays transform before his eyes. By the conflict's third standard day, something extraordinary had happened. Neither the Orion Confederacy nor the Proxima Alliance had achieved a traditional victory. Instead, they found themselves in a negotiation framework that seemed to emerge from nowhere, a framework that gave both sides a path to resolution. The human diplomatic team had effectively neutralized a potential decades-long war in less than a week. Back on Earth, celebration was muted. This wasn't about victory. This was about demonstrating a new approach to conflict resolution. Humans weren't just another species in the galaxy. They were becoming a strategic wildcard that no one could predict. Alina Park's final diplomatic communication was elegantly simple. Conflict resolution requires understanding, not dominance. The Galactic Council would soon receive the reports, and they would realize that everything they understood about humanity was wrong. The Meridian conflict was over, but something much larger was just beginning. In observational databases across multiple star systems, analysts would spend years trying to understand how a small human intervention had completely transformed a seemingly intractable military confrontation. Michael Choi allowed himself a small smile. Humans were learning, and the galaxy was about to change. The Proxima invasion began like countless other interstellar conflicts, with overwhelming technological superiority and absolute confidence. Their massive battleships approached human colonial territories, sensors scanning, weapons charged, expecting a swift and easy conquest. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Captain David Kim's fleet looked small by traditional galactic standards. Fewer ships, less apparent firepower, but each vessel carried something the Proxima invaders couldn't comprehend: adaptive quantum technology that learned and transformed in milliseconds. The first wave of Proxima attacks seemed devastating. Their energy weapons could slice through traditional defensive shields like paper. Entire human outpost stations erupted in spectacular explosions. For a moment, victory appeared certain. And their work. The human ships didn't just defend. They absorbed technological information from each attack. Where Proxima weapons struck, human systems immediately developed counter-frequencies. Shields that were vulnerable in the first minute became impenetrable in the next. Alina Park monitored the communications network. While military engagement happened, she was transmitting complex data streams that disrupted Proxima's strategic coordination. Their command structures began experiencing unexplained communication failures. The molecular disruptive weaponry developed in secret human laboratories proved revolutionary. These weren't traditional weapons. They were intelligent systems that could deconstruct enemy ship structures at the atomic level. Proxima commanders watched in horror as their most advanced battleships suddenly began to dissolve. Not explode, not break apart. Simply disassemble into base molecular components, as if some unseen intelligence was carefully taking apart a complex machine. "This is impossible," screamed Raneltalk, the Proxima fleet commander, watching tactical displays transform before his eyes. Human ships moved with an unpredictability that defied traditional combat algorithms. They didn't follow expected patrol patterns. They anticipated enemy movements before enemy commanders could even conceive them. It was like fighting an opponent who could read minds and reshape reality simultaneously. Within 3 standard galactic days, the entire Proxima invasion fleet had been systematically dismantled. Not through brute force, but through an intelligent, adaptive technological response that rewrote the very understanding of warfare. The human colonial territories remained largely intact. Casualties were minimal, and the message was clear: do not underestimate humanity. Quantum entanglement communication allowed human commanders to coordinate with a speed and precision that seemed almost supernatural to other species. Their technology wasn't just advanced, it was alive, learning, evolving with each moment of conflict. Michael Choi's systems were recording every microsecond of the engagement. Each interaction became a learning opportunity, each enemy weapon strike a chance to develop new defensive technologies. When the final Proxima ships retreated, they carried with them a fundamental understanding. Humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were a transformative force in galactic civilization. Alina Park's diplomatic team was already preparing the next phase. This wasn't about celebration. This was about demonstrating a new paradigm of technological and strategic thinking. Back on Earth, celebrations were muted. Intelligent leaders understood that this was just the beginning of a much larger transformation. The Proxima invasion had failed, but humanity's real victory was something far more profound. They had shown that technological innovation, adaptive thinking, and strategic creativity could overcome traditional military superiority. As data streams analyzed the conflict across multiple star systems, one thing became abundantly clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had arrived, and they were ready to reshape everything. The political landscape of the galaxy trembled in the aftermath of the Proxima invasion. Alina Park arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters with a calm that unnerved veteran diplomats. She wasn't there to negotiate. She was there to rewrite the rules. Corin Vex, who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant, now watched her with a mixture of fear and reluctant respect. The human diplomatic approach was nothing like anything the Council had ever experienced. Where traditional diplomacy relied on centuries-old protocols and rigid communication structures, Alina introduced something entirely different. Her negotiation strategies were fluid, adaptive, and built on a fundamental understanding of complex systems that left other species struggling to keep up. The first major diplomatic breakthrough came unexpectedly. A long-standing territorial dispute between 3 different star systems had been frozen for over 2 centuries. Alina's team developed a multi-layered resolution framework that not only solved the immediate conflict, but created a new model of cooperative governance. Michael Choi's analytical systems worked alongside her. They weren't just preparing diplomatic strategies, they were mapping potential future scenarios with unprecedented accuracy. Each diplomatic interaction became a complex chess game where humans could predict moves several steps ahead. The Galactic Council found itself facing a fundamental transformation. Humanity wasn't asking to join the existing political structure. They were proposing an entirely new approach to interstellar relations. Used adaptive economic models that could adjust in real time to changing galactic conditions. Technology transfer became a dynamic, evolving process rather than a static transaction. Captain David Kim played a crucial role behind the scenes. While Lelinda negotiated, he ensured that human capabilities remained both transparent and slightly mysterious. Other species knew humans were powerful, but they could never fully predict how that power would manifest. The Orion Confederacy, still reeling from the Meridian conflict, found themselves unexpectedly repositioned. Human diplomatic strategies had effectively neutralized their traditional power dynamics without a single aggressive action. Communication networks across multiple star systems began to change. Quantum-encrypted diplomatic channels, developed by human technologists, offered levels of security and transparency that were revolutionary. Secrets became more difficult to maintain, and collaborative problem-solving became the new standard. Traditional diplomatic representatives watched in confusion. Humans didn't follow the expected scripts. They didn't maintain the traditional power hierarchies. Instead, they approached each interaction as a complex, adaptive system that could be optimized for mutual benefit. Elena Park's most significant achievement wasn't a single treaty or agreement. It was a fundamental shift in how different civilizations understood cooperation. Diplomacy was no longer about winning or losing. It was about continuous adaptation and mutual growth. The Galactic Council meetings transformed. Where once they were formal, rigid gatherings, they now became dynamic problem-solving sessions. Human representatives brought innovative approaches that challenged everything previously understood about interstellar politics. Michael Choi's analytical systems continued to provide unprecedented insights. They could model potential diplomatic outcomes with a complexity that left traditional analysts bewildered. Predictions became more accurate, conflicts became more predictable, and resolutions became more comprehensive. As the political reshaping continued, one thing became clear: humanity wasn't just participating in galactic politics. They were fundamentally redesigning how different civilizations could interact. The old power structures crumbled, not through violence or aggressive expansion, but through a sophisticated understanding of complex systems and collaborative potential. Corin Vex, watching the transformation, realized the truth that would reshape galactic understanding. Humans were not just another species. They were a transformative force that would change everything. The political landscape had been rewritten, and humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the reality of humanity's transformation became undeniable. What had begun as a distant, seemingly insignificant species had become the most dynamic force in interstellar civilization. Corin Vex stood at the central platform, his previous arrogance replaced by a profound understanding. Humanity had not conquered through traditional means. They had reshaped the entire concept of galactic interaction. Captain David Kim and Elena Park represented Earth, but they were more than representatives. They were architects of a new potential future. Their approach wasn't about dominance, but about creating systems that allowed all species to evolve and collaborate. Michael Choi's analytical systems had become the backbone of a new diplomatic framework. Where previous civilizations relied on static data and historical precedents, humans introduced adaptive intelligence that could predict and reshape potential conflicts before they emerged. The technological leaps were unprecedented. Human research stations developed quantum communication networks that made previous interstellar communication look like primitive smoke signals. Their adaptive technologies could transform entire planetary infrastructures in months, not centuries. The Proxima Alliance, Once aggressive invaders now sought human collaboration. Their military leadership understood that human strategic thinking made traditional warfare obsolete. Conflict resolution had become an intelligent, nuanced process of mutual understanding. Ranelagh, the former military commander who had initially underestimated humans, now led a collaborative research initiative. Human-developed technologies were revolutionizing everything from energy production to medical treatments across multiple star systems. They became dynamic problem-solving platforms where different species could genuinely collaborate. The old hierarchical models collapsed, replaced by network-based cooperative frameworks. Earth itself had transformed. No longer divided by national boundaries, human civilization had become a unified, forward-thinking collective. Their internal progress mirrored their galactic interactions, adaptive, intelligent, constantly evolving. The quantum communication networks developed by human researchers allowed instantaneous information exchange across vast distances. Scientific discoveries that once took generations could now be shared and integrated within weeks. Alina Park's diplomatic strategies went beyond traditional negotiation. She introduced frameworks that allowed different civilizations to see mutual benefits rather than potential conflicts. Every interaction became an opportunity for collective growth. The Galactic Council's traditional decision-making processes were completely redesigned. Humans introduced AI-assisted collaborative models that could process complex scenarios with unprecedented accuracy. Political deadlocks became opportunities for innovative solutions. Technological transfer became a dynamic living process. Human research stations didn't just share technologies. They created adaptive platforms where different species could collectively develop new solutions to complex challenges. Michael Choi's predictive models could map potential galactic developments with such accuracy that long-standing conflicts began to dissolve. Understanding replaced confrontation. Collaboration replaced competition. The human approach wasn't about becoming the dominant species. It was about creating a framework where every civilization could realize its potential. They didn't seek to control. They sought to enable. Captain David Kim often repeated a simple philosophy that became a guiding principle. Our strength is not in our weapons, but in our ability to understand and adapt. Planetary development programs transformed. Where previous civilizations saw resources as something to be conquered, humans introduced sustainable, collaborative models that balanced technological progress with ecological preservation. The final transformation was philosophical. Humanity had introduced a new way of thinking about existence itself, not as a competition, but as a complex, interconnected system of mutual potential. As the Galactic Council meeting concluded, Corin Vex looked at the human representatives. What he saw was not a threat, but a profound opportunity for collective evolution. The old galactic paradigm had ended. A new future was beginning, and humanity stood at its center, not as conquerors, but as architects of a more intelligent, collaborative universe.